I'm Brandi Kruse. Coming up today on Undivided, Democrats are making it clear they're going to tax you into poverty and they're going to pass their extreme agenda, and they really do not care what you think about it. Plus, votes are expected today in Olympia on rent control and upending parental rights. And state workers protested in Olympia, actually undermining their own case against furloughs. That and much more coming up today on Undivided. Remember, you can support our show for just $5 a month by signing up at undividedpod.com. If you are a member of the military, a veteran, or a first responder, you can get 30% off for a limited time for your first year of Undivided by using the promo code USA. Oh, good gravy. Good gracious. Man, hello, by the way. Welcome to Undivided. I'm Brandi Kruse. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving up. I got to say it all. I got to fit it in because if I don't say it, I feel weird. Nicole just hit me with a real doozy. Nicole was pulling some sound from some stuff that was said in Olympia, and I hadn't gone back and listened to what she pulled until just like 60 seconds before we came on the air. We have a winner for the dumbest thing said by a politician the entire legislative session in Olympia. It's wild. We'll get to it momentarily. But there's a lot of horrible stuff that's going to happen today in Olympia. If you care about this wonderful state of ours, you care about its economic viability, you care about the ability of working class people to live here, to own homes, to rent. So there's a few things that our understanding is they are going to be brought to the floor for votes today. One of them is rent control. I got to say I'm maybe not shocked, but I really thought that cooler heads would prevail on rent control. So a few things that have been happening behind the scenes, I got word that Democrats were going to caucus on this bill, which basically means they go behind closed doors. They figure out if they have enough votes. Because as the Democrats and the party in power, you don't want to bring a bill to the floor only for it to fail if it's one that you support. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So then I got word that they're likely going to vote on it sometime this evening or tonight, which tells me if they're bringing it to the floor, they believe that they have enough votes to pass it, or they wouldn't do that. Now, I have also heard that there is some amendments that will be put forth that could dramatically improve this situation so that the bill doesn't really resemble quote unquote rent control at all. I don't know if that's going to happen. All I can, I never pray. Here it is, Nicole, my first prayer. Please, Jesus, tell me if I do a good job. I'm going to take it seriously. I don't want to mock religion. Please, Heavenly Father, for the sake of Washington families and our prosperity, please let Bob Ferguson veto rent control. And if he does,
don't make promises you can't keep.
I'll keep it. I'll keep it. I will go to church one time with you or someone else who wants to invite me.
Okay.
If he vetoes it, I will go to church at least one time. Fair? I can keep that promise.
Amen.
Amen. I can keep that promise. Just insane stuff. And I just can't imagine that anyone who thinks themselves a moderate Democrat would think that rent control, which has failed everywhere it's ever been tried, would be the right policy at the right moment for Washington state. It's really beyond my comprehension. However, one of our first indicators that they were going to bring this to the floor for a vote was yesterday during the Democratic leadership availability. So there was a press conference with Democratic leaders from the House and Senate. I will say, just as an aside, I was invited to it. Oh, that's right. So if you've been following our whole ordeal to try to get new media to have credentials and a seat at the table, and that whole debacle over Jonathan Cho being blocked from a press conference, behind the scenes, we've been trying to coax the situation, and now Democrats invited both of us, myself and Jonathan Cho, to yesterday's media availability. Of course, it happened right in the middle of our live show, maybe intentionally, I don't know. They scheduled it for 12:30 p.m. yesterday, so I couldn't go because we were here doing our live show, but I hope that that's progress. But we did watch it virtually, and so I wanted to play a little bit of it, because I will say, it's the most sanctimonious press conference I've ever heard. It was the most sanctimonious press conference I've ever heard. We know best what's good for you. You're going to get what we give you. We're going to pass our extreme agenda. We really don't care what you think. I mean, it was unhinged. And it's just the smugness. Maybe smug is a better word than sanctimonious of Senator Jamie Peterson, the Democratic Majority Leader, and Senator Manka Dhingra especially. So I'll get to a little bit of that. But on the rent control, Senator Peterson, during this press availability, listed it as one of the bills that they're going to prioritize here in the final days and weeks of the session.
We're set up for a week of intense floor action on some really high priorities for us. That includes the rent stabilization bill that came from the House, as well as the permit to purchase bill, a bill updating paid family and medical leave, the parents' rights and students' rights bill from Representative Stonier are among the highlights that we'll be looking at over the next few days.
Yeah, that's great. We'll have more on parental rights in a moment, but the worst of the worst bills that they say, and if you've got the Democratic leader sitting there saying these are priorities for us, tells me they think they have the votes to put them through. So, I mean, rent control on so many fronts is going to be devastating for the state if it passes, not to mention, and I don't know, maybe this is to punish Bob Ferguson. You know, Bob made a couple key promises on the campaign trail. One of the biggest promises he made was he's going to build all these like hundreds of thousands of units of affordable housing. Builders and developers have literally been down in Olympia testifying and then speaking to lawmakers behind the scenes saying that they will scale down. They're not going to be able to build all of that affordable housing that Bob Ferguson promised on the campaign trail. So part of me is like, they're doing this just to screw over Bob Ferguson because he hasn't fallen in line with him on other things like the wealth tax, et cetera, because they're robbing him of a few of his campaign promises. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know. And I mean, what a weird position to be in, to think that Bob Ferguson is the only thing standing between us and the insane progressives in Olympia. I just never thought I'd be saying that. But all right. So a couple things. So yes, they're acknowledging at this press conference, this is Joe Fitzgibbon over on the House side, acknowledging that the wealth tax, because of what Bob Ferguson said, he said he wouldn't sign a budget that balances with the wealth tax because it might not stand up in court, and that would put them right back in the position that they started in. This is just fascinating, though. Joe Fitzgibbon saying, the wealth tax is off the table this year, but we'll probably revisit it because people think it's a really good idea.
We have a lot of members and a lot of members of the legislature and members of the public who would really like to see a tool like that asks the wealthiest to support public services more. And so, you know, there's definitely some disappointment among many of our members as well as many of our constituents that particular tool is not going to be part of our budget solution this year.
Yeah. Even if you have some constituents who want you to use it, doesn't mean it's a good idea. And doesn't speak at all to whether it's legal, whether it would be something the state could even carry out. I mean, Bob Ferguson didn't come out and say the wealth tax is a horrible, awful idea. I mean, it is, right? He just said that you can't balance the budget with something that we probably won't even be able to keep. So like your constituents, which I assume you mean like far left Seattleites, might, because they just scream tax the rich and everything, they might think it's a great idea. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that the problem with it this session isn't going to be the exact same problem with it next session. Those problems will still exist. So if you actually care about being taken seriously when it comes to budgeting and finding revenues that will fill your deficit because you won't cut any money, then I can't take you seriously if you continue to go back to a failed policy. All right. So then on the property tax issue, we still don't know. One of the things that shocked me, I really thought, and I said on the show yesterday, that we were going to get some big budget announcement out of this media availability. We got virtually nothing from them. They are still doing all of this in private, holding their cards close to the chest, holding their cards.
Keeping their close to the vest.
Close to the vest is something else.
Yeah.
Come on, somebody's got to be keeping track of all my failed metaphors. They're keeping things on the down low. And it's like we have 2 weeks left in the session. And also people have a lot riding on this. There are people who've testified in Olympia saying, I will have to move out of my home if you increase property taxes any further. And this is where the condescension, the sanctimony, the smugness comes into play. Here's Senator Jamie Peterson. And what do I always say on the show? What is one of their very first tools and tactics when they're getting pushback over something? They'll either, they'll vilify people who are opposed to it, or they'll lie about it, right? Or the one they always fall back on is, well, you just don't get it because you're dumb. Here's Peterson.
I think there's a lot of misunderstanding
we're just
about
dum-dums.
how property tax works. And I suspect that as the session proceeds, that we are likely to have a lot more discussion and public conversation to help people understand what the proposals that are on the table would actually do to their taxes and what they would not do. There's a lot of demagoguery about that.
You don't understand how property taxes work. I'm pretty sure every homeowner understands how property taxes work. And he says, we're out here just fear-mongering. No, we're telling them what is true is that their property taxes will go up at much higher rates than they're able to go up right now without a vote of the people. That's pretty simple for individuals to be able to understand. But of course, Senator Makadingra, who's one of the biggest liars in Olympia, besides like Senator Markolius, she is one of she's a proven liar. What was one of the things she lied about constantly during previous legislative sessions? Her completely made up data around police pursuits. Completely made up. It was proven false. Even a UW study had to be like taken down and fixed. And she never acknowledged that the information she was using to justify that policy was just completely off base. In fact, she kept pushing it. So, and then also she lied about still being employed as a King County senior deputy prosecuting attorney, which we broke the news of. So this is a proven, repeated liar who's basically saying, people are being misled on what these property tax proposals will do. And then she says this.
The bottom line is our constituents want to make sure they have public schools where our kids can graduate successfully. They want to make sure that our schools are able to function in the manner they need to, that our special needs kids are getting the services they need. And we've seen public safety being mentioned over and over again for years. And the way our cities and counties fund public safety is through property taxes. And so you have to take a balanced approach, taking a look at all the needs our community has and how we're going to meet those needs.
If I knew literally nothing, I would hear that and I would say, yeah, that's right. I mean, we do fund those things through property taxes, but I know more than literally nothing. And I know that when she says, we need property taxes because our well-funded schools are schools that do well, our schools are better funded than they've ever been, and they're performing worse than they ever have. Test scores are in the toilet. Attendance is down. Enrollment is down. We have shown literal charts that show that the more money that we've given to our public school system, the worse the outcomes have been. And that even accounting for inflation and all of that. So then it's like, oh no, just give us more money through your property taxes. Don't you want good schools? Yeah, we want good schools. And schools are getting a hell of a lot of money right now, and we're having terrible results for it. So it's not even a debate anymore. This whole argument that more money equals better schools, Washington State has single-handedly disproven. It is not true. One does not necessarily equal the other, because you can take that money and you can waste it on ideological things and stuff that have nothing to do with academics, as our public school systems have. And you can spend a ton of money and have crap outcomes. The other thing that's rich there that I'm sure you've noticed and you're screaming at your screens about right now is her having the audacity to bring up public safety. How dare you? Someone who has been at the forefront of eroding public safety in the state of Washington. The driver of rolling back police pursuits. Things got so bad that even Democrats had to undo it because there was initiative. And she has the audacity to say, well, property taxes will help improve public safety. You don't care about public safety. Mrs. lying about still being a prosecutor because it looks good on my resume. And then when people accuse me of being soft on crime, I could say, how can you say I'm soft on crime? I'm a prosecuting attorney when I haven't been a prosecuting attorney for years. It's just crazy. It's like, and then people you just hear it and you're like, oh, that sounds nice. But you don't get any sort of context for how asinine it is for her to be the one to talk about wanting more money for public safety. It's just insane. And if you can believe it, I started the show by saying I've heard the stupidest thing I've heard all legislative session. That's not even it. That wasn't even it. All right, a couple more things. So on the show yesterday, I'm having a lot of fun. Is it obvious?
I mean, yes, it's
the
obvious.
Most fun you can have while being devastated for our state. Okay? Maybe I'm just getting excited for our vacation next week. So yesterday, Republicans had a press conference that was much different from this one. Night and day. Republicans had a press conference where they invited real people, real Washingtonians who own homes or rent out properties to talk about the impact that the property tax increases would have on them personally. And these were tough stories to listen to. And well, let me play first. Can I play? So one of them was, I'll just play a short version of it. These mom and pop landlords who stood up and basically said, look, with all this stuff, I mean, you throw rent control into the equation, right? With all this stuff, we are operating on the margins and we don't want to be constantly increasing rents, but you increase our property taxes too. What else do we do? Here's a clip from them.
You know, a lot of times we try to absorb the costs of different things that rise, you know, electricity rates, garbage rates, taxes, because we try to keep the people in the places that we've rented to them. And we've done that a number of times where we just try to, you know, basically not raise the rent. But if this goes the way they're talking about, there's going to be a lot of people out on the street. We're just not going to be able to absorb anymore.
So they're specifically talking about the impact that property tax increases would have on them and have on them as landlords, right? So Senator Jamie Peterson watched that press conference. How do I know? He suggests here that he watched that press conference, that he heard those stories. He heard that story on the impact of property taxes. Yet he still says this.
What was super interesting in the press availability this morning that I heard several young Republicans commenting about how difficult rent increases were for them. And so, you know, we're really interested in and excited about the debate about rent stabilization because I think that it really is responsive to a lot of the concerns that we were hearing even at the Republican press availability.
Yeah, so he was referring to some other commenters that had talked about as young people that, hey, you increase property taxes, like I'm never going to be able to be a homeowner. So Senator Peterson has heard all that, all these people talking about like the mom and pop landlord we talked about, the personal stories of how property tax increases will hurt them, including young people who want to be homeowners. And he turns around and says, well, maybe you should support rent control, which literally makes no sense. And as the reason I played that mom and pop landlord is because rent control and property tax increases go hand in hand and work together to create a devastating environment where people will not be able to afford a place to live. And it's a math thing, and it kind of baffles me because Senator Peterson's an attorney. I don't think he's a dumb guy. I think he's smart. So I'm trying to figure out, does he really believe this stuff, or is he saying it because it just sounds better? So you raise property taxes at a rate that really has no ceiling, right? So now you're a landlord and you're passing that cost on to your tenants, which of course you would. You're not going to sit there and constantly absorb increased costs of owning the property that you're renting out. And then the legislature comes in and limits your increases. You can only increase it so much, rent control. So what happens when your costs exceed the amount that you're able to pass along to tenants? Well, then you're losing money. And then you're going to sell your house. And it's going to be bought by a single family. It's not going to be a rental house anymore. And then we're in an even worse situation than we started off in. So it's just insane to me how he can say to people who are worried about affording homes or affording a place to live that they should support rent control. It is absolutely asinine. The other thing, and again, going back to the sanctimony. So we know that the gas tax is likely to increase 6 to 9 cents a gallon. And look, that's bipartisan. There's bipartisan support for that. State law really limits what resources can be used to fund transportation projects. They can't touch Climate Commitment Act money. Can't touch it. Hundreds of millions of dollars coming in. A lot of it you paid for at the gas pump. But no, that has to go to climate projects. Insane. So they're kind of left with the gas tax. So it's probably going to be a 6 to 9 cent per gallon increase. And I thought this was a good question by this reporter. I'm not sure who it is, but basically, you know, that is still a lot for people who've got to drive to and from work and to get their families. So what's your, I mean, I honestly think this reporter was looking for some iota of sympathy, right? Like trying to give us some human answer, some sympathy for the tax burden for Washingtonians. Police are like setting him up as a softball. Like, here, knock it out of the park. Instead, here it is.
What is your message to people who are looking at that and driving an old car that takes a lot of gas, or they commute a long distance from a rural area or wherever they might be? What's your message to people who are looking at that and are like, hey?
You know, if you've got people who are commuting a lot and using the transportation infrastructure a lot, then 6 cents a gallon is a bargain for having a system that functions better.
Insufferable. Like, say something nice. Like, can we get any sort of sympathy with all the new taxes you're pushing on people? Any sort of, hey, we didn't spend wisely, we didn't do this, this, and this. We want to look at trying to use some CCA funds for the roads to alleviate the strain on drivers. Anything that suggests that there's a heart in there, you know? That there's a heart of some kind. So here's the doozy, the one you've been waiting for. I cannot believe there's so many elements of this. Maybe I've oversold it. Maybe I haven't. So one of the budgetary items that they're sort of being asked to look at is adding money to pay for additional security during World Cup for like the state patrol. So, you know, World Cup in the United States, and Seattle's going to have some games, and Seattle needs additional security if they hope to have a successful World Cup presence. So Manka Dhingra was asked about that, and it's basically not a priority for them, she says, because, well, I'll let her explain.
I'll just add, you know, this could have been an event that would have been incredible for the state of Washington. But what is happening at the federal level, people don't want to come to the United States of America. So it's going to be interesting for me to see who actually shows up and where they come from. But it is not safe for people from other countries to come to the United States right now, because people are literally being picked up from the streets and taken away.
Can you play that again? I think I need to hear it again.
I'll just add, you know, this could have been an event that would have been incredible for the state of Washington. But what is happening at the federal level, people don't want to come to the United States of America. So it's going to be interesting for me to see who actually shows up and where they come from. But it is not safe for people from other countries to come to the United States right now, because people are literally being picked up from the streets and taken away.
So we're having a conversation about potentially millions of dollars that is needed in Washington state for increased security for the World Cup because Seattle is such a gross drug den, literally because they're concerned about safety issues. So that's why they need the money, right? Oh, people don't want to come here anyway because it's not safe, not because of the safety issues that they're asking for additional security for, but because of Donald Trump. But that's not, obviously there's much more to this. It's Donald Trump's fault. The people who you're saying he's just picking up off the street, it's just like at random, right? Why? Because they came here, right? Because they wanted to come here. And they came here illegally. So they wanted to come to the United States so badly to flee whatever hell they were fleeing. A drug cartel in Mexico, whatever third world government corruption. They thought that this was a much safer place to be. So they came here illegally, and now they're being scooped up and taken back home. So it's not safe to be here, yet everyone wants to be here. And that's why Donald Trump is having so much activity with taking them off the streets. That's one of the craziest thing, the dumbest thing this session for sure. The dumbest thing this session for nobody will want to come here. I think they're going to want to come here just fine. The question is, are we going to give them a version of Seattle that won't leave us in the headlines saying World Cuppers attacked by, you know, mentally ill drug addicts in downtown Seattle? Or are we going to give them a version of Seattle that ideally we would see all the time? I mean, they're going to flood it with additional security anyway, which I'm not necessarily in favor of, because I hate when they do that and they come up and they clean an area and everything looks pristine and nice just for the World Cup. And then as soon as people leave, we have to live with the hell that is reality. But for Manka Dhingra, I mean, that's not, can you imagine that world every day in your head? Can you imagine that being your world, where you literally have convinced yourself that people don't want to come to the United States, even for a worldwide popular sporting event, because they're worried that Donald Trump is going to scoop them off the streets and put them in a van and it's not safe here? The only thing that's not safe about coming to watch the World Cup in Seattle is all the drug dealers and mentally ill people and repeat offenders and gang members who have whatever guns they want because they don't abide by the gun laws that Democrats push through that make it more difficult to defend ourselves.
That's actually
Insane.
a real concern in Mexico, and you're going there next week. You can get thrown in the back of a van
Literally.
for any reason.
In any
reason.
I mean, that is the most, I know she's not white, but that's the most white privileged thing I've ever heard anyone say. That is like the most privileged. Imagine that outlook. We have people that are going to be coming in. I mean, soccer is a popular sport in some of the poorest places on earth, in some of the most like corrupt, dangerous places on earth. And they love this sport so much. And imagine thinking those people wouldn't jump at an opportunity to come here to the United States of America and watch the sport they love because it's not safe here. Imagine being that privileged that is actually your outlook on the world. It's wild. I mean, it's
I know. I wonder if
beyond.
it really is, or she just wants to instill that fear in people that anybody could just get thrown in the back of a van. And like I said, I had a friend that happened to for falling in the street in Mexico. That's a real concern. But even then, you hand him some money and you get out.
Well, I told you about my experience in Mexico City, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we were walking with open beers and the guy's like, we got to take you to the embassy. I'm like, how much money you want?
And we still go.
Right,
number
we still
one.
go.
And
We still go.
a lot of those people are trying to get out.
That is an insane soundbite. I put that out on social. People are going to have a lot of fun with that. I just can't imagine that way of thinking. I have a very, very hard time with it. And then I remind myself, so we have a special airing next week on ICE. We've been out with ICE on a drug bust and talking to individuals who are trying to sort of navigate our sanctuary environment. We'll have more on that special coming up. But just this morning, we taped with Congressman Adam Smith, a Democrat. Congressman Smith versus like talking to him.
Oh.
And then hearing from like Jamie Peterson and Manka Dhingra, you realize how wide a range there is with sanity inside a single political party.
Yeah, it's something about the intention, because even when we didn't agree with some of the things Adam Smith says, we understood where he was coming from. And then you kind of, go back and forth.
Right.
Like,
and then you move on because you're not going to agree, but it's not this like,
this is nuts.
it's not
This is
law.
nuts.
He's not making his arguments off lies, off of fear mongering,
Right.
after ideological nonsense.
Right.
He has a different worldview. He explains it in a way that's rational, where I disagree, but like, I don't think he's coming from a bad place. And then you hear these just intellectually dishonest, fear-mongering, scapegoating. Oh, it's so bad.
Obsessed. They're just obsessed.
And they're the ones, that's a leadership press conference. That's a leadership press conference in Olympia. Those are the leaders of the Democratic Party in Olympia. And those are the ones in charge of your fate and the fate of the state. And that's a very scary place to be.
Very.
Wild, wild, wild. Okay, as I mentioned, parental rights is coming up for a vote. We'll talk about that a little bit, have a call to action on that front. And then hundreds of state workers protested outside the governor's office in Olympia. And I think they actually hurt their case a little bit. We'll have those coming up. First, if you are selling your home, reach out to our friend Wes Jones, sellwithwes.com, sellwithwes.com. Look, Wes has been doing this for a long time. As we talk on the show, he's been through the ups and downs of the market, and he knows how to make sure that your listing stands out. Right now is a great time, by the way, to sell your home because there's pent-up demand. So if you have a house and he can get it properly ready for sale, even if that means taking on a few projects and helping you navigate those projects, even, having you pay for it on the back end, and also getting the home properly priced. He says that's a huge mistake a lot of real estate agents make, is having the home hit the market and it not be priced correctly. I mean, that can just kill its momentum. So that's one of the things from the onset that Wes Jones and his team are going to talk to you about and kind of work through their thought process on it. So sellwithwes.com, sellwithwes.com. May in particular going to be a great month of the year for real estate. Sellwithwes.com, a better way to sell your home. All right. So just an action alert here. I mean, there's a million action alerts I could give you today. I mean, if you want to reach out on the rent control issue to your elected leaders, I think that's a great idea. But one we haven't talked about a lot in recent weeks with all this tax conversation is House Bill 1296, which is the House version of the bill to erode parental rights. As you heard Senator Jamie Peterson say there off the top, that is a bill that's on their priority list. I'm told it could be voted on today. So take a moment. On social media, I shared some links that take you right to the page where you can email your elected leaders. Again, some of you might feel like you're just twiddling your thumbs with that. or running in place, because if they're bringing it to the floor, that means it has enough votes. But I think it's always important to make sure that you make your voices heard in a respectful way and you let them know the reasons why you don't support the policy. And hell, if you support the policy, by all means, yay, democracy. You email them just the same and you tell them you support it. That's fine. I disagree, but it's just fine. And this is scary stuff. I mean, we're only a year out from when the Parental Bill of Rights became law through the initiative process. And they can just come back and undo it just like that. It's like, what good is the initiative process anyway? More and more. I mean, they find any way they can to undermine it. And they can do it blatantly. To say that reversing an initiative is one of your priorities in the final days of and final weeks of the session, and you're not ashamed of that one bit, it's just unbelievable to me. I mean, no care or concern for people who dissent from their worldview. They're not there serving their constituents. They're there serving the constituents who align with them, and that's a shame. All right, this is delicious. So you probably remember that Bob Ferguson has floated furloughs as a way to balance the budget. I think it's 1 day a month for 2 years was his latest proposal that I can recall. So 1 furlough day a month for 2 years for state employees that are like kind of non-essential. So like not for state patrol or something like that. And so that's a way he thinks to bring in millions of dollars in savings. Well, the Washington Federation of State Employees, the union that represents state employees, they don't like that one bit. And they were down not only protesting in Olympia, not just like on the steps of the Capitol. There's an I word that might explain what they did here. Insurrection-y. It was very insurrection-y, wasn't it? Had this been I'll play the video in a second. Had this been a conservative group on permit to purchase a firearm that went and did this exact same thing, you don't think the media would have really compared it to a certain protest in the nation's capital?
I will give a little bit of credit. I got an alert from, I believe, Cairo 7 that said protesters have entered the Capitol. That's it. So I got one alert because I get alerts from all of them. I got that one.
All right. They entered the Capitol. They went straight to the doors of the governor's office and they did this.
Tax the rich. No tax. No furloughs. 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 Tax the rich.
Okay. That from Drew Mickelson at King 5 News. No cuts, no furloughs, tax the rich. They couldn't come up with anything that rhymed with furloughs? Not getting creative enough. So I couldn't help but notice Shauna Sowersby, another reporter who covers Olympia, she had taken a picture and we zoomed in on the picture and we couldn't help but notice that there were a lot of signs being held that had nothing to do with furloughs for state employees. Stop mass deportations. Okay. I guess I'm not getting the nexus there, and I don't think that Bob Ferguson's supporting mass deportations. Fight for $25 an hour. So like this, so they're basically just the regular socialist protesters who happen to also be state employees, and they're there just with all their regular gripes, right? And the tax the rich. But as soon as I saw that, so I've said on the show previously that I don't really think it's necessarily fair for state employees to have to pay the price for lawmakers' inability to budget, right? I mean, lawmakers are giving themselves raises. And then it's like, oh, but state workers, you're going to have to take 1 day off a month. And, you know, for some state workers who don't make a lot of money, that's 12 unpaid days a year. And is that necessarily fair? So I've been critical of that because that's not really necessarily their decision making that led to such a massive deficit. Then I saw that and I was like, I don't even care anymore. I know not all state workers were there, but you are trying to make the point that Bob Ferguson shouldn't give you furlough days when you are in the middle of a work day protesting at the state capitol. Yeah, if you can be at the state capitol for a couple hours in the middle of a work day as a state worker, you're not exactly giving him a lot of reasons not to give you 1 furlough day a month. So I actually think you undercut your case a little bit there. Maybe everyone who was in there should get 10 furlough days a month, and then the other state workers should get none.
That's a good plan.
Yes, I like that. But 100%, come on. If that had been conservatives there to protest permit to purchase a firearm. It would have been the lead story on every newscast yesterday, and it would have been the front page of the Seattle Times. And it would have been a bad headline. Because the Seattle Times did cover it. Now I got to go make sure I didn't call out the Seattle Times. And wouldn't that be funny if it's the front page of the Seattle Times right now? Hold on. Real-time fact-checking myself.
Not the front page now.
Yeah. So, and it would have been like gun-wielding conservatives storm. They would use the word storm state capitol. It would have been totally different. So it's just absolutely hypocritical and insane, but undermines their case. Those people, give them a couple furlough days a month. They'll be just fine. All right. I have encouraged you guys to take the First Mark Challenge. It's just one of those things that's a good idea to make sure that you have the insurance you need. That's important. Nobody is here telling you cheap out on your insurance. Absolutely not. Honestly, I think that's what you get with some of these other insurance brokers or companies where you're like, save this much money in this amount of time, or whatever it is. And you're going to end up with crap insurance that's not going to help you out when the worst of the worst happens. So hell no, that's not what this is about. We want you to have good insurance. We want you to have the right insurance. What we don't want, and what First Mark doesn't want, is for you to be paying for insurance you don't need, for you to be undercovered, and for you to be over the cost that you should be paying for that insurance. So I think for me, why I say that this is a no-brainer is it doesn't cost you any money. It just costs you a little bit of time. So you're going to sign up for the First Mark Challenge. You're going to go over your current insurance, talk to them about your insurance needs, maybe anything that's changing in your life. And then they go out and they do all the work for you for free. And they come back with their recommendations. And at the end of the day, you might walk away from that conversation being like, well, I guess I don't need new insurance, or I guess I can't save any money. Or you're going to walk away being like, dang, why did I not do that sooner? That's what we hear from a lot of Undivided viewers and listeners is, I finally did it. I wish I had done it years ago. I've been hearing about First Mark insurance for years. We've had viewers who are saving like $4,000, $5,000 a year. In some instances, like $150 a month, but that's still more than $1,000 a year back in your pocket that you don't need to be paying into insurance, and you still have great insurance. So firstmarkinsurance.com, firstmarkinsurance.com. The very best part is they work for you, not the insurance companies. They have your best interests in mind. All right, so Democrats won't cut the blatantly ridiculous things like laser hair removal for transgender inmates. However, they will try to cut costs at the expense of the mentally disabled and the vulnerable. Let's talk about it in our segment, Unbelievable. Okay, so there's a bill we haven't talked about yet during the legislative session. It's sort of flown under the radar a little bit. It is House Bill 1472. And it has to do with closing a couple care facilities that right now essentially house wards of the state. So if you're, they're called residential rehabilitation centers, but like if you're, for instance, severely mentally impaired or disabled and you don't have a family member who can take care of you, or you don't have a family member who can pay for your care, you kind of become, it's very sad, but you become a ward of the state and you end up at one of these facilities. Well, because I think it's really because Democrats don't like the phrase institution. They think that these are these people being institutionalized. And so they want these facilities closed down, and then to hopefully send these vulnerable individuals into community care facilities. So that's their master plan, although they haven't really laid any of the groundwork for that plan to actually work out. So there have been a couple instances of public testimony on this. One of the ones I thought was interesting, before we get to Representative Travis Couture, who has a very personal connection with this and was in tears in Olympia trying to get his Democratic colleagues to reconsider this bill. I'm going to play, I think we're playing the whole thing or much of it or part of it. Just sad. So in March, there was testimony on this bill, and one of the workers at one of these facilities said, look, these people come from homeless camps, jails sometimes, where they have nowhere else to go. Where do you think they're going to go back to if this isn't handled in the right way? Here it is.
If Rainier closes, Washington will see some of these citizens from both facilities end up in hospitals, jails, and homeless shelters. Many of the most recent admissions that we have had are people who have come from jails, hospitals, and homeless shelters. Our ID and DD population deserves better. Again, we provide them a safety net when community placement has not been successful for them.
Yeah, and so there was another former employee of one of these facilities who testified and said, you know, she still works with some of the patients that were housed there, and they'll beg to be placed back in one of these facilities.
Rainier is not a prison. Many of my clients that have moved out beg to come back. When I told a former resident that he could no longer go back, the light in his eyes went out. And unfortunately, he passed away not long after. It is a broken heart. And it was the care that he was receiving at Rainier School. At Rainier, my clients have community. They have activities, they have trainings, there's medical and dental that the community cannot support. In the community, it is a fight to provide even a small fraction of these services to clients. Some are waiting for dental for up to 5 years just to be seen.
This is definitely one of those examples of Democrats pushing for something because it feels good to them. Feels good. Oh, this isn't, people call it an institution. It's like a prison. Can't have that. It's like we got to do something that feels good, that sounds better, right? Even if we haven't even hashed out how that would all work or how it would actually impact the patients. There was one woman who testified, she's a sister of a patient, and she says that like the thought for him of the facility closing down is devastating.
When Tom has been at Rainier, is the people were always caring. We considered them family. We volunteered there. It's almost like we grew up there with Tom.
Yeah, and she says he's been there since the 70s, and he recently moved out, and it's been really rough for him. And so she's fearful, like if he has to go back and then they shut down the facility, then he's not going to like the alternative and it's going to be much more difficult. So it seems like they're not really factoring in, one, is there a viable alternative that's in place, right? What do the patients and any sort of patient families or caregivers think about the idea? Because very few of them were allowed to testify and they ran out of time, and like even family members would come to testify, didn't get a chance to share those thoughts with the committee. So someone who did speak, and I thought it was just very moving, Representative Travis Couture, a Republican who has kind of a personal experience here, again, just begging his Democratic colleagues to reconsider.
It's a lot like Housing First, things like we did during COVID, where we put drug-addicted homeless people into houses all by themselves to die. It's cruel. These residents couldn't come to our committee. I'm thankful that, although my kids are disabled, that they weren't this gravely disabled. This isn't taxes. This isn't a budget. This isn't even a facility. This is human beings. These facilities were set up because we had a social and moral obligation to these people who are wards of the state. But they also have families. Families who cannot physically take care of them. I know what will happen. This is a grave, grave mistake. And like I said, I will work with anybody to try to find whatever money you think is going to save this. There's a mix of people who believe that we should get rid of institutions like RHC's Rainier School and Yakima Valley School at any cost. But is it worth any cost? The cost of human life? This bill is wrong, and I truly understand the thoughts of many people who don't want institutions. But it's the people who never had to live in the institutions who want to end them. It's the families and the residents who must live in the institutions who are fighting and begging to keep them. It is not a line item in a budget to them, it is their lives. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I love Travis Couture. That is someone who genuinely cares. When you compare that and the emotion and the understanding to like the cuts we just played from the Democrats who just seem to just honestly be so callous about the decisions that they're making down there. It's just night and day. And as he said, and I think one thing that's really stark in this particular debate, as much as, you know, it's gone under the radar, is the people who want to keep them are the people who are actually there, living there, dealing with it, getting the services, and the people who want to get rid of it are like bureaucrats who just aren't interested in those personal stories. And if, as they've claimed, this is like a budget cost-saving measure, I mean, think of all the other things they're spending money on. And look, I understand this is an example of Republicans not wanting to cut something, but making a damn good argument for not cutting it and saying, hey, let's look at money elsewhere. We've given all of these ideas. But I go back to the old, I'm sorry to keep using it, I go back to the old laser hair removal for transgender inmates example. Because I can't take Democrats seriously on any sort of budgetary issue or difficult decision when they're funding stuff like that. They lose all credibility. It's like they'd rather keep funding stuff like that than to make sure that wards of the state who otherwise might end up back on the streets and in jail, who are severely intellectually challenged and developmentally disabled, to make sure that they're properly taken care of. It's about choices and the choices that are being made. So it's really sad, and it's just absolutely unbelievable. So we'll keep track of that one. All right, coming up next, a Washington sheriff who said, I will not abide by the sanctuary policies, just got some FaceTime in Congress testifying before the House Judiciary Committee. So we'll discuss that. First, man, going on vacation, feeling great. You look great too, Nicole. You always look great.
Oh, thanks, Brandi. Oh, I don't think always, but thank you.
Oh, I think you do. Me, on the other hand, there have been times where I haven't looked so great. Like when
it was about the same time I didn't.
Like when I gained 40 pounds during the pandemic. But thanks to Eastside Weight Loss Clinic, I have not only lost that weight, but I have kept it off. I've kept it off for more than 2 years. And I'm just feeling good. And I feel like I got the tools in my tool belt to be able to maintain a healthy weight long term for the first time in my life. I've always had struggles with weight. I've gone up and I've come down, and I've gone up and I've gone down. This is the only program that's ever worked for me. So if you've had those struggles as well and you're not, drugs or injections don't sound like the solution to you, certainly not for long-term weight loss, then reach out to Dr. Ryan Coogan and his team at eastsideweightlossclinic.com, eastsideweightlossclinic.com, and schedule a free 15-minute consultation. Just talk over the program. Make sure it's right for you. Not every program is right for every person. I will say it's 60 days of really, really hard work and commitment. So check that out, eastsideweightlossclinic.com. Okay, some national/local news. So the House Judiciary Committee had a hearing. Nicole and I always fumble judiciary, had a hearing on sanctuary policies where the Adams County Sheriff was invited to Congress to testify. We'll have more on his comments in a moment, but just setting this back up. So the sheriff in Adams County, Washington said, basically, I want to work with ICE. Like, I think that working with ICE to get violent criminals off our streets is fulfilling my duty as the sheriff and is helping with public safety. So we might be living in a sanctuary state. And he was poking the bear with this. He knew that by saying that publicly, the Democrats in Olympia wouldn't like that too much, and they didn't. And so Nick Brown, the Attorney General, sued the sheriff over his comments and over his, actions to facilitate ICE work and to share information with them in violation, Attorney General Nick Brown contends, in violation of state sanctuary laws. So after that happened, you might recall that Congressman Michael Baumgartner and the chair of the Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan, got together and they sent a letter to Attorney General Nick Brown demanding answers, basically saying, why do you think you have the authority to do this? Arguing that some of the sanctuary policies directly conflict with federal law and actually impede lawful actions by ICE, wanting to know why he's personally going after the Adams County Sheriff. So there's all this tit for tat going back and forth. So then there's the hearing in the Judiciary Committee yesterday. So I'll talk about the sheriff's comments. We'll play some of the sheriff's comments that he had in a moment. But of course, Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal of our state is on that committee. And she had some interesting Manka Dhingra style opening comments.
Perhaps the chairman would have this level of concern for the victims of senseless gun violence across this country. 47,000 people who were killed from gun violence just in 1 year alone. Or perhaps the chairman would have this level of concern for the families of law enforcement that were killed during the January 6th insurrection on the United States Capitol, or even the families that are suffering from rising grocery prices and devastated retirement accounts thanks to Donald Trump's chaotic economic policy.
I think of the Wonder Woman scene where it's like she's got her little bracelets on that deflect things, and she's like, bing, 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 bing. It's just like total deflection. I mean, when is one time during the Biden administration that Congresswoman Jayapal talked about her concern for the costs, the food costs for families? Show me one time. When is one time she has expressed care and concern for the lives and well-being of law enforcement except for January 6th? One time. So she pretends to care about things when they're politically convenient to her and when she doesn't want to face the reality of the drawbacks to being a sanctuary state. So it's just like, I mean, it's a total joke, right? All right, so Sheriff Dale Wagner of Adams County, Washington, got an opportunity to speak. There were several sheriffs who were invited to testify before the committee, and he was asked about this lawsuit the AG has filed against him.
Sheriff Wagner, you faced legal threats for doing what you're doing. Could you tell us a little bit about that real quickly?
Yeah, right now we're being faced with a lawsuit from the Attorney General of Washington State on, in my view, some...
They're suing you for trying to uphold the law. What a crazy world we live in. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but how awful that is.
That's okay.
No, because it pisses me off.
Yeah, I get it. It pisses me off. But the reality is that it's some of the circumstances that have been, it's very political. It's politically driven, and it's unfortunate that we're in that position because we, like I said before, we've had a jail that's been closed for 3 years. I'm not housing people. I use outside entities to do that. I don't have the resources and manpower to go out and round people up out in the fields. Not only that, the other mentioned person that was here earlier, look, we're a small community, and I do have the trust of my community. I have a 2/3 Hispanic population in my workforce at the sheriff's office. I have guys that less than 5 years ago, 6 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, that were illegal, got their citizenship, and they work for me. So I understand the process, and I understand how these people are affected. The whole fear-mongering is coming from both sides, quite frankly, but it does come, and it tries to hit our community because we are a Hispanic population of 34%.
And there's the truth.
That's the truth. And we unfortunately are dealing with a nationwide problem where the border is the southern border, not the northern yet. And my community is affected because guess what? We fit the mold that needs to be in politics apparently right now.
Thank you for what you do. I yield back.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, he makes a lot of good points and really calling out both parties, but he's got people who were immigrants to this country on his force, and I think it attacks this sort of idea that if you allow these sheriff's office and police departments to cooperate with ICE, that they'll be rounding up brown people on the streets and asking them for their paperwork. And that's just not what's in their hearts. It's not even their priorities. They don't have the manpower, as he points out, to do it, even if they wanted to do it. This is about assisting ICE in improving public safety by getting violent criminals off the streets. And they can pick and choose. This idea that it's all or nothing. If you help ICE, they're also going to be at these work sites, and they're going to be in the fields, and they're going to be rounding up workers and pulling people over and saying, hey, your skin is brown enough, show me your paperwork. It's like, no, they can choose. And he sounds like a very reasonable guy. There's also this issue of, you're telling me that I have to, if I've got an illegal immigrant, illegal alien in my jail that's going to be released in a matter of hours, and they're accused of doing, let's say, raping someone, that I can't tell ICE, so ICE can come get them and take them off our streets and out of our community, and then they're not hurting people anymore. No, I'm going to release them and then make ICE chase them through the town? Like, that's going to be a safer situation for everyone involved? It makes no sense. He went on to talk about the public safety impact of the sanctuary policies to his county.
So the state law actually directly, not indirectly, not impliedly, it actually directly defies federal law. Federal statute.
That's what I understand, yes.
Yeah, because federal statute says if you get a detainer, you're supposed to hold.
Yeah.
You're supposed to hold. That's what federal law says, and you can't do that there.
Correct.
How does that impact the safety of your community?
Well, ours is impacted in a great way because, one, my jail has been closed for 3 years, and I find that ironic in this situation as well. But it impacts us in a great way because, like I believe it was Mr. Jordan was explaining, putting people out onto the street and having them get caught again becomes a bigger problem. We're not arresting on immigration status. We're putting people in jail for crimes they committed in our community, and then ICE because of public records that are available and things like that, they have the ability to find out who's in our custody and where they are and when they're released and all those kind of things. And they are basically released to their custody in the opposite way, similar to Denver in most cases.
Yeah, letting them out. And then in Denver, there was an instance where ICE had to get a bunch of people armed. The guy took off on them. So now they're chasing a criminal through the community, and one of the cops got hurt. So it makes no sense. It's utterly insane that we can't have some sort of distinction like, hey, yeah, you can hand over a criminal. I mean, that's not the most controversial thing in the world. It's unreal. And again, we have a special airing next week while we're gone about ICE's operations in the state of Washington, a sanctuary state, and some of the challenges that they run into trying to get drug dealers off the streets, trying to get violent criminals off the streets after they've already been convicted of crimes. It's really unreal. And we talked as part of this special to Congressman Adam Smith, a Democrat in our state, and he agrees with us on a ton of this. And he can see the nuance in, yeah, get the criminals out of here. Hey, give them due process, but get the criminals out of here. It's the other sort of administrative stuff that we don't need our local departments being involved in, so it doesn't have to be an all or nothing situation. So there are some Democrats who are willing to help on this issue and to use the nuance that's really, I think, the situation demands. We just need them to have louder voices, speak up, push back against their own parties, and try to come to some semblance of a sane immigration policy. So, all right, one more thing I want to talk about on the national front that has a tie to us. I'm going to talk about an email that was leaked to us by the State Department of Corrections. But first, Maine. Trump continues. He's really got a vendetta against Maine, a good vendetta. And I think it's really because the lady's like, talk back to him, and he doesn't like that.
Oh, yeah.
So he's like, well, now Maine's screwed. So it was like Maine was the first one to get in trouble for boys against girls. And now Attorney General Pam Bondi came out and said the Trump administration is stopping federal funding, certain federal funding to Maine because they allow dudes to be in women's prisons.
We pulled all non-essential funding from the Department of Corrections in Maine because they were allowing a man in a woman's prison, a giant 6'1", 245-pound guy who committed a double murder with a knife, stabbed his parents to death and the family dog, and he identified as a woman. So they were letting him be housed in a female prison. No longer. We will pull your funding. We will protect women in prison. We will protect women in sports. We will protect women throughout this country. No more of that.
Our women need help too, Pam. Come on, Pam. Come on over. Don't make me go outside the White House and just wave with a big sign or something. Help us. I'm not going to scale the fence because I've seen what happens to people when they scale the fence at the White House. So that's going on. Meanwhile, just because it's related to DOC in our state, we do have men in women's prisons, so we need some help with that situation. But so there was an email leaked to us that went out from the Office of the Secretary of the Department of Corrections to DOC employees. And I just find it very fascinating because it's a reflection of their priorities, right? So they're worried about losing some federal funding and the DEI nonsense. They don't want to get rid of it, right? So similar to, what was the letter? Oh, the Chris Rakedahl, the OSPI, the head of public schools, we talked about on the show yesterday. He said, we're not giving in on the DEI stuff. We're going to continue with DEI, even if it costs us federal funding. So it's kind of interesting that on the same day, it seems, the head of DOC sent out a similar email to his staff saying, we're committed to DEI no matter what. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it says, Dear DOC team, diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives have come under intense scrutiny. Federal agencies, major corporations, and universities across the country are shuttering their programs. At a time when people are retreating to their corners, it is more important than ever that we recognize and celebrate the diverse perspectives that every person brings to our work. Our Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, they call theirs the Office of Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Respect.
Oh.
Interesting. Is crucial to our mission of positively changing lives by creating a fair and just environment for all to exceed. Yeah, because it's totally fair to house a dude in a woman's cell. Gotcha. And it says, most importantly, promoting an inclusive and diverse work environment promotes safety. Yeah, again, the whole dude in a chick cell and everything that's happened with that doesn't seem like a super safe environment. So basically this whole email, again, I won't read the whole thing, but it's this all like, we're all in on DEI and we're not going to change that. Now, one of the interesting things that our whistleblower pointed out, so they get this email, and one of the links in the email takes them to resources for staff. So some of these DOC employees that aren't like the frontline guards and stuff, they're going to face these furlough days, right? So there's not enough money, so they need to take a furlough day. Yet they're committed to their DEI department, which clearly costs money and has to be staffed. And there was a link to staff to a therapist so they could work through mentally all of this stuff. So like if you're scared about DEI going away or whatever it is, or maybe even you're worried about a furlough, you can spend time with a therapist. They got plenty of money to send you to the therapist to work through your outrage that the DEI is under attack. But you still, are still sending employees home 1 month or 1 day a month for 2 years for furloughs. So again, they'll prioritize ideologically driven stuff all day long at any cost, any expense. But the actual important stuff, like making sure people get a paycheck who are doing work, it's not a priority for them. So DEI is the priority. Make no mistake about it. All right, it's Thursday. We have an awesome episode of Florida Report. I taped with Miranda earlier. I was like, those were some of my favorite stories we've ever had on Florida Report. And as usual, and the reason we have the segment with my sister every week is because the stuff happening in Florida seems to be the exact opposite of the stuff that's happening now in Washington State. So this is our weekly segment, Florida Report. Is it our weekly segment, Florida Report? There you go.
It's not even controversial anymore. People know in Florida their freedoms are going to be respected.
Miranda, hello.
Hello.
We have some fascinating stories out of Florida. And it's, again, does it go too far? Is it too much? I don't know. So we'll listen. So this headline from Florida Today. Teacher is the first to lose job over Florida law requiring parent sign-off on preferred names. So this teacher, if I'm understanding this correctly, lost her job because she called a student by their preferred name or pronoun without getting a consent from parents.
Correct. So this is part of a legislation that was passed back in 2023, part of the parental rights movement happening here in Florida, would basically require students, if they want to be called a different name, not just a preferred name, even a nickname. Say your name's Jonathan and you want to be called John, a parent has to sign off that it's okay for teachers to call you by this name. And this teacher called a student by their preferred name without that parental consent form being filed and signed by the parent. And they haven't quite lost their job yet. They're going to finish out this school year and they will not be asked back to this school next year.
Crazy. So not renewing her contract. Some people were mad about it, but I imagine overwhelmingly in Florida. And it's tough because, again, if a teacher were to lose their job because they called someone John, not Jonathan, I think that's ridiculous. But, and it's a totally different thing than to call your child when they go to school, he when it's a she or something like that. So there's an element of me that sees instances where this law could go too far and just be a real dramatic reaction if it's a nickname thing. But I feel completely different with the gender identity. I think keeping a secret like that from parents, is a big deal.
Absolutely. And I do think, this complaint came from the parent. This wasn't something that some other students snitched him out. A parent became aware that this happened and brought the complaint to the school district, which makes me believe that form came home and the parent was like, I'm not signing this.
Yep.
So now that is a direct stepping on the toe of a parent's relationship with their kid. I think that teachers, they do get to know students in a way that parents don't. So if you are a teacher and you really feel like, I think that this student would do better in school in my class if I was able to call them by this specific name, parent-teacher conference. Figure it out between the two of you. I don't understand why there's such it's like an intentional lack of communication. It feels very narcissistic to just be like, I'm just gonna go do this knowing it's against state law, knowing it's against what the parent asked, and I'm gonna call this student by the name they prefer. I think that it was probably done with absolutely no malice towards the student, but I can't help but think that there was some sort of snub to the parents involved in that.
Oh, 100%. It sounds like it from that. So maybe this is a circumstance where if you have a teacher that's intentionally undermining parents, they shouldn't be allowed to teach there, especially if it's a law. So I don't feel so bad in this particular case. I just don't want to see it like flagrant. Yeah, I don't want to see any ridiculous examples because it goes too far. But also it wouldn't be necessary if all this crazy stuff hadn't been happening in schools where you're hiding different, quote, genders and stuff from parents. So, you know, this is a reaction to extremism. So on the headline of this next one, and that story's just crazy, by the way. This one's also just, Florida's a different world, man. So the headline, when I read it, I thought, oh God, that's too far. But then I read the story and I'm like, nope, totally deserved it. So the headline is trans students arrest for violating Florida bathroom law is thought to be a first. So there's a 20-year-old named Marcy who faces a misdemeanor trespassing charge, punishable by up to 60 days in jail. So when I hear that headline, like a student went in a bathroom because they're trans and now they got arrested, oh no, that's not what happened here.
No, this person walked into this building and announced, I am here to break the law. And they're a transgender woman. So they used the female bathroom.
It's a dude, yeah.
It's a guy. But to be completely honest, this was the wrong way to go, obviously the wrong way to go about it. This person presents as a female.
Okay.
They could have made a much better point, in my opinion, to walk in, use the restroom, wash their hands, and leave, to show that you can absolutely be a transgender person and use the bathroom you identified with nobody noticing. But like, of course, back to the narcissistic age of today, they have to announce and draw attention and create a whole scene trying to prove I don't know what kind of point.
Yeah, so this was at the Florida State Capitol. So Marcy said, I'm here to break the law, and then police led Marcy out in handcuffs. I understand what you're saying, because transgender people are not new. There are transgender people who go about their lives, they dress and present as a gender other than what they were born, and they don't freaking bother anyone. And they've probably been using those bathrooms for a long time, and they're not in there to be pervs or to expose themselves or to sexually assault anyone. But it's the radicals who have kind of ruined it for transgender individuals who just wanted to live their lives and feel normal, so to speak, and not bother anyone. So it's like, if people are mad that there are all these extremes now, be mad at yourself for letting it get so far in the other direction that now we need laws like this to prevent, situations where people are trying to go in the opposite bathroom and, cause a problem. Everyone is so annoying. Why? Why is it not us?
I feel the same. I feel the same way. I'm like, if people could just wake up in the morning and live within their own selves and feel confident in that, no matter who you are, what you are, politics aside, you would live a very happy, peaceful life. And I don't know why people don't choose to do that.
Well, and it's like, I could go on this rant forever about, we just want to be accepted. You were. And then you got in our face and told us if we didn't accept you in this way and this way and this way, then we were horrible, bigoted, awful people, and we need to absolutely let you take over all these. It's just, so you take it so far. So I feel bad for trans people who were perfectly fine and content. We had one of them on this show, which was an 18-year-old, and had a great conversation, and they seemed to understand some of the concerns, playing against girls and using girls' spaces and all. But I think at the end of the day, really just kind of wanted to live their life and be left alone. And those are the people I feel bad for in all of this. Okay, one last one. This one is, I guess I'm confused why this has to happen, but I guess it makes sense. So the Florida legislature has approved Gulf of America as the official name change. So does that just related to state documents and how the state law refers to the Gulf of Mexico versus the Gulf of America?
So there's actually two bills that have just been passed through. One is changing the legal and state, verbiage around the Gulf of Mexico. So now, for example, counties on the Gulf side will all have to change a lot of their legal representation to being Gulf of America. Okay. The other one is about educational purposes. This one would require schools to now update all of their, learning materials to reflect Gulf of America being taught in schools.
I guess it makes sense. I don't hate it.
Yeah.
I don't hate it. Is it the priority of the century? No, but it's fine. But I don't want them to go and spend a bunch of money, you know, going in and like removing books and replacing them or whatever, or signage. I have to imagine there's an awful lot of signage along the Gulf of America in Florida that says Gulf of Mexico, you know, government signage and business signage and all that stuff. So let's not get carried away. Let's not spend millions of dollars on it, but it's fine.
I'm curious about when next time I travel to the Gulf, like when I go into those little souvenir shops, if they're going to have a bunch of like little statues and snow globes that are like Gulf of America instead of Gulf of Mexico.
Oh,
for sure.
You know people are buying that stuff like crazy.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I think when anything like this happens, the first year is going to be like, oh my gosh. And then 10 years from now, it's just going to be the Gulf of America down here. And nobody's going to think one way or another about it. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm like, it's not the most important thing, but like, I'm not mad.
You know, but now that I think about it, will you pick me up a Gulf of America souvenir next time you're down there?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm thinking Pat needs one, like our brother. Yeah, I'm getting everybody for Christmas Gulf of America souvenirs.
Just for fun, grab one for Mom, okay?
For sure. Mom's getting one.
I think Nicole wants one too. All right, Miranda, thank you so much.
Bye. Have a good weekend.
It's not even controversial anymore. People know in Florida their freedoms are going to be respected.
Oh, good stuff. I would love to be on a beach in Florida right now. Oh, I'm going to a beach next week. It's not Florida, but you know, it's Mexico. Yeah. Are we allowed to go to Mexico? Have they banned us over immigration, or are we fine? Okay, we'll see how it goes. All right, we'll get to comments. Our daily show poll coming up next. First, I had a fascinating conversation I just taped before the show today with Zach Abraham of Bulwark Capital. We're going to post it tonight, and it's this really refreshing, just 30-minute chat about what the hell went on with the stocks and with the tariffs. And it honestly, we both left it, Nicole, are like, we feel like we understand things so much better now. So I think if you're looking for a sane, rational conversation about everything that went down this week, this one's going to be it. So I'll post it across platforms coming up tonight. And this really, for me, is a good opportunity to remind you about the importance of getting a second opinion on your retirement portfolio. Zach Abraham and his team at Bulwark Capital can do that for you. Just take a look over things. And one of the things he told us in the chat that we had is if you're really worried right now and your portfolio performed incredibly poorly this past week, he said that means it's not properly protected against risk. And it might mean that you need to make some changes to it. So that's one of the big things that Bulwark's Know Your Risk Portfolio Review will help you do. No obligation. It really is a second opinion. He's going to look at it. And he's going to tell you whether he thinks that you're properly protected against risk or not, and some changes that you might be able to make. So you only get one retirement. I mean, that's the big thing. And if this week freaked you out, it's a good time to just take a second look at stuff. So knowyourriskradio.com, knowyourriskradio.com. So be on the lookout for that conversation with Zach that I'll post this evening. And then, of course, coming up in a couple days, we'll have a new episode of Doge Watch with Zach Abraham. Okay, let's get to our daily subscriber show poll. So we've heard the priorities of Democrats. A couple of the things they listed: rent control, permit to purchase a firearm, and then upending parental rights. So I asked subscribers on Patreon, Locals, and X, which of the bills that I mentioned are you most concerned about becoming law? Rent control, permit to purchase, or parental rights upheaval? Nicole, go.
Well, I guess rent control, just because I think that's going to be detrimental to our economy here.
Mm-hmm.
But parental rights is pretty terrifying to me, and I'm not even a parent.
Yeah, parental rights is the one that angers me the most because it is a big middle finger to parents and to the initiative process. Permit to purchase is blatantly unconstitutional. It'll take a while, but it'll be overturned. Mm-hmm. Rent control, I agree with you. I think rent control will be the most disastrous to the state at large and will hurt the most people. So rent control. And actually, our subscribers feel the opposite.
What?
Yeah, only 16%. On both Patreon and Locals, rent control only has like 15% of the vote.
That's shocking to me.
So is it? Well, which one do you think has the most? Let's see how well you know
parental
our
rights.
Subscribers. Yeah, parental
because people
rights.
are angry.
Yeah, parental rights. People are angry, totally rightfully so. And we all have issues that are important to us. Like you said, like we're not parents. Maybe if I was a parent, this would be something that was like top of my list. Danielle says, I chose permit to purchase. If I were to vote based on what affects me the most, parental rights though, overall, if I don't apply how it affects my life. E says there's enough pushback in legal standings. If people get off their asses over permits and parents' rights, there won't be for rent control. And when it's in, it will stay. Just look at New York City. Yeah, that's the fear, that they'll never get rid of rent control if it passes. Joel, even though my kids are grown, I'm worried about the generation going through the school system right now. So parental rights are important. Yeah, and I don't think you have to be a parent to understand that, certainly. Beth, I'm frankly concerned about all of them, but feeling like the permit to purchase would immediately be challenged as unconstitutional, and rent control would be as well, but hopefully it won't pass at all with the ethics standards attached to it. But there will be no viable support for parents if that egregious change to the parental rights passes. Let's see here. Tony, I sold both my rental houses to non-rental purchasers due to the rent control and related issues. It's screwing the economy, but we've been driving families away for a long time. And then he says, without gun rights, no other rights stand. I don't carry. I'm not a gun nut. But that is the policy most designed to suppress the population, which I do. If you're like, it's blatantly unconstitutional, so it's so egregious in that regard, I can see. Let's read a couple over there on locals. Greg, all of these issues are a great concern, but the one that I'm most concerned about is property tax increases. The thing is, Greg, that wasn't one of the options. So you fail. No, I'm just kidding. But you know, the reason why is because I think everybody would have chose it. And so I was trying to pick some things that were sort of along the same lines to make it difficult for you to make a selection. All right, let's get to comments. A lot of super chats today. Is that because we're going on vacation, which I'll give you some housekeeping in a minute after comments and sanity check. Okay, so stand by for that. Bill Biz, $20 super chat. Isn't it amazing how 1,300 hands-off demonstrators spontaneously erupted throughout the country in support of maintaining funding for government agencies and the multitude of NGOs? Yeah, it's weird. But there was more than 1,300 demonstrators across the country, maybe in Olympia. And then there was like 1,000 in Olympia. I mean, it was quite a big protest.
130,000?
Yeah, maybe 130,000. Old Sub Sailor, $50 super chat. Today is the anniversary of the sinking of the USS Thresher in 1963. It was the first of 2 U.S. nuclear-powered submarines to be lost at sea. Please take a moment to honor those sailors and shipyard workers that lost their lives serving our country. Thank you for that. I was not aware of that, so thank you for taking time to tell us about it. All right, Papa Woody says Peterson is arrogant and completely condescending. I got to agree. It's always that tone. Maybe it's the lawyer, because it's Dingra and Peterson. Maybe that's the lawyer in them. I mean, but I don't know lawyers that aren't arrogant and condescending.
Right, but that probably is something that they're taught.
Yeah.
Because you go in...
Just talk down to people.
Well, no, I just mean if you're representing somebody, you have to talk like you know what you're talking about. Because whether, it's the truth or not, whether you're defending somebody that's guilty or not, you have to know. You have to talk like you know it.
Well, yeah, and like, it's so obvious that you must be dumb if you don't know this kind of thing. So maybe it is the lawyer in them. My Cup of Tea 101 says, misunderstanding on property taxes. Brother, I rent, and I know that if property taxes go up, then my rent does too. Even my unborn child understands this. Yeah, it's really not a complicated concept. Todd Welch, the World Cup is the largest sporting event in the world with the only exception of the Olympics. And we have a state senator who's telling people basically it's not safe here, don't come. I mean,
in the country, not just to Seattle. This is to the country.
Right, because there's other World Cup games around the country. But think about that.
No, I just mean she's telling people not to come to the U.S.
So, but specifically, I mean, the business community in Seattle has been gearing up for World Cup for a while. And they know it's going to be a great economic boon to the city at a time when the city's been devastated economically, businesses and all this stuff, and foot traffic. So you have a sitting state senator who, because she hates Donald Trump so much, would try to undermine this important moment and event for Seattle. That's crazy. It's similar to former vice presidential candidate Tim Walz, who was celebrating when Tesla stocks went down. It's like you are celebrating like something bad happening to an American company, not to mention the Minnesota Retirement Fund for state workers was tied to Tesla. It's so crazy what people will do for the sake of partisanship. So, I mean, I guarantee that there are some Seattle businesses and even Seattle politicians who have already called Manka Dhingra about that, because I posted that clip.
Good.
I mean, it's insane. All right, Nicole's cat. Mom always looks amazing. Meow.
And then There's one for you too.
Oh, Brandi, you look amazing as well. Oh, thank you. Thanks. You know, sometimes I'm over here just feeling like the ugly one. You know?
Stop.
Nicole always pulls stills after the show. So, you know, we put out segments and Nicole builds the thumbnail, right? She's always telling me how, because if she pulls an ugly still of me, I'm like, why are you pulling a still of me when I have a double chin? It'll be like, and then she'll grab that one. And I'm like, why? And she's like, it's so hard to find a good picture of you. It's like, I mean, that's not how she says it. But it's like, I'm very animated, right?
Yes.
So I'm always moving and doing
The days
things.
that are easier are the days when we do more serious stuff, because then you freeze. Yeah. And you're emphasizing points, so then I can just grab it. And it's a good shot.
Let me give you a good one.
Okay, thanks. I'll grab that for later. Wait, what do you want it to be in response to the Democrats?
The people who listen to the podcast are not going to understand that. Son Miller, TTT, $10 super chat. Come to church with us. Easter in Eastern Washington would be great. I did get a lot of people inviting me to church, which is very nice.
It's very nice.
So
Maybe you'll like it.
Bob Ferguson, will you save some of those church names? If Bob Ferguson vetoes rent control, I will make good on that, and I'll come to church with one of you. Okay? All right, great. All right, Dr. Von Braun, permit to purchase is the worst one. I won't be complying with that unconstitutional garbage. Yeah, okay. Great stuff today, you guys. Great comments. We'll do our closing sanity check. What?
It's 13,000 demonstrations.
Oh.
Sorry, Matt corrected me because that was one from yesterday, so I must have copied it wrong.
Copied it wrong. Okay, 1,300 demonstrations. Gotcha. Okay. I don't think I missed anything. Nicole, thank you. Well, this is the last time people are going to see you.
See you in a week and a half, almost.
Week, a couple days, yeah.
Week and a couple days.
Okay, cool.
Tanner. Yeah.
Who?
I'll be Tanner and well
I
rested.
thought you were saying goodbye to Tanner.
No.
I was like, who's Tanner? Do you have a new
see you
boyfriend?
in a couple weeks. Tanner and well rested.
Tanner, got it. Okay, that's great. I was like, who's Tanner? That's super random. Are we giving shout outs on the show now? With that, let's get to our closing sanity check. All right, this clip just gave me joy because I've been saying, what a terrible 2028 election strategy to like go out and target and vandalize and assault Tesla owners who, like, by and large are liberals. Like, it's just, I don't understand that strategy, right? And this particular Tesla owner couldn't wrap his mind around it either.
Check it out, guys. Somebody keyed the crap out of my Tesla, a car I bought 6 years ago in the state of California, because I'm concerned about climate change. Oh, but some amazing resistance fighter keyed the crap out of it, and that's going to do it. The voting didn't work, but, you know, this defiling the car of a fellow liberal, we did it, guys. We got him. Today's our Liberation Day. Go celebrate. Just go celebrate. Woo!
Absolutely could not say it better. Just crazy. That has been our sanity check for today. That has been today's episode of Undivided. So some housekeeping. Nicole, no, stop it. You took it too soon. Sorry. Stop it. We'll come back to it.
Okay, housekeeping
first. So we are going to be on vacation next week, the whole team, Nicole, me, Daryl. And so I know there's a lot going on, but there's never a good time to take vacation. So we're going to be on vacation. However, we have a lot of exciting stuff that's coming up, and we never just leave you empty-handed. So we will not be missing an episode of Sundays with Subscribers. So we'll have a new episode of Sundays with Subscribers this week, as well as Easter Sunday, where one of our guests will be talking about eggs, which I'm very excited for, but we also have a second guest on that episode as well. So Sundays with Subscribers will be here to stay. We'll have a couple guest editorials to keep you up to date on things that are happening in Olympia. And also coming up next week, I've been telling you we're working on a special project. We're going to take a look at ICE's operations here in Washington State, a sanctuary state, how some of our state policies and city policies are making it more difficult for them to carry out their lawful orders under federal law. So we went inside on an ICE raid on a drug bust. We'll have the man who's in charge of that agency for Washington State here in studio. So we have a lot coming up. I know you'll miss us. I'll miss you too. I probably won't come back any tanner because I don't tan well. Maybe a little burnt.
Well, that's because you wear 90 for sunscreen.
I value my skin and I don't want to age prematurely, but I love and appreciate every single one of you. I hope you get some time to enjoy sun here. I hope sun comes out for you as well. It was pretty nice when I walked out the door today. So, new episode of Politics Unpacked tomorrow. Also, remember, we are going to be putting out that conversation with Zach, which is going to be a sane chat about what happened with tariffs and the economy. So be on the lookout for that. We'll also have a new episode of Doge Watch. So basically, the kitchen sink coming your way, except the live shows. So don't be waiting around at noon on Monday wondering where Brandi and Nicole are. We'll be on a beach somewhere. Well, I'll be by a pool, but you know. All right, that's it. If you haven't signed up to support our show already, please do so. Yes, I'm asking you to financially support our show right before we take a week off. Undividedpod.com. Undividedpod.com. It's just $5 a month. Anything else? Like I said, I'm having way too much fun. And I will still, across platforms, if anything significant develops in Olympia, I'll make sure to keep you guys up to date. So we're not leaving you hanging. Okay, ta-ta for now.